Hello, welcome in another important video. I hope you all are doing great. And in this video, we will learn about Docker Swarm service. Okay, so let's get started. So before we actually start with Docker Swarm service, let me explain you how we were creating containers earlier and how we will create containers from now on. Okay, so earlier we were using single node. Okay, so if I have to explain you, we were earlier we were simply creating new instance, and that instance is nothing but our node, because if you remember definition of node is nothing but machine on which Docker engine is installed, on which Docker engine is already installed. So this is our node, and we were creating containers on it. But now in real life scenario, we will need to work with multiple nodes. And the reason behind using multiple nodes is because Docker always believes in distributed environment. Okay, so for an example, if you are working on very big project, for example, you are creating one trading platform, so in that case you will have to use multiple nodes, because single node will not be able to serve to all the requests. Okay, because trading application will have to deal with security, it will have to deal with a lot of data, also the authentication, login, and a lot of different things. So in that case you will need multiple servers, multiple nodes to get it done. Okay, so imagine now you have decided, okay, you will create 3 different nodes, and these 3 different nodes will serve all the services. Now you will have to make communication between node 1, node 2, and node 3. It cannot work independently, because node 1 status is required in node 3 and node 3 status is required in node 2. So communication between different nodes is required, and we will also need to manage these nodes, because whenever we will create containers, if any container stop working, we will have to restart it. Okay, we cannot do this thing manually, because in real life scenario, in a production version, it depends on application, but big applications will normally have containers more than 100 and 200 containers, so you cannot manage those containers manually, and that is the reason why we use Docker Swarm also. Okay, so if I have to explain role of Docker Swarm service, so Docker Swarm service allows us to create containers on a distributed environment. This is important statement. Let me explain you once again. So basically, Docker Swarm service to distribute helps to create containers on a distributed environment. Meaning of this is, so imagine you have 3 different nodes in your project and you want to create new container. So in that case, Docker service will have information where Docker service can create new container, because there is a possibility that node 2 and node 3 is busy. Okay, so in that case, if you create container on node 2, it will not work, because it will run out of resources. So in that case you will have to create container on node 1. But normally you don't have to worry about it, because Docker Swarm service will take care of creating new container on a specific node automatically. All right, Docker Swarm service is smart enough to identify which node is not busy and which node is busy. Based on that, Docker Swarm service takes those decisions. Okay, so I hope you understood difference between at the approach we were creating our containers using Docker run command, and the approach which we will use now on to create containers in our Docker Swarm. All right, I hope you have understood this, but if you don't worry, because we will see this with one example. Okay, so let's get started. So as you can see, I have one session running. Let me delete all nodes here. Okay, so now we have empty session. So let me go ahead on this setting option, and I will create Docker Swarm network with one manager and one worker. Okay, we have already seen this in our previous video. Okay, so I hope you will not find this difficult. Okay, so now currently we have one Docker Swarm network, and in that Swarm network we have one manager and we have one worker. Okay, so let me go ahead in a manager and let me use one command, and that command is, so inside this manager I will use docker service ls command. So as you can see, we do not have any service running at the moment, and if we try to use the same command on our worker, let's see what happens. Okay, this command is not allowed in worker node because worker node will not have information about other nodes. It will work independently. Okay, so whatever the docker swarm command will have to run, we'll have to run it on our docker manager. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's create one docker swarm service, and I will explain you how it works. Okay, this command is really simple. So we'll have to use docker service create command in order to create new service, and let me give name to this service. So let's say I'll give it a name nginx1. Okay, and I'm going to use nginx image. Okay, I think that's it. So currently I'm not gonna make this command complicated, although we can pass multiple parameters. We'll see that later on, but for now we have really simple docker service command. So let's see what it will do. Okay, so this command will create container from this particular given image. Okay, and it will assign name to this service as a nginx1. Okay, let me run this. So now it is started working. It will fetch nginx image first because we do not have this locally available. So let's wait until this completes. Alright, so as you can see, the execution is completed, and now if I use docker container ls command, okay, so this container is created inside this node itself. If I use same command, which is nothing but docker container ls, so as you can see, we do not have any container in our worker node. So now what I'll do here is I will run this command once again, and now at this time I will assign name to my service as a nginx2. Okay, let me run this. Alright, this is also executed. Now technically I run this command twice. Okay, so two containers should get create of nginx image. Now if I use docker container ls command again, you will see I have only one container at this moment. Okay, and you might be wondering where is the second container. Okay, and the second container we will find in our worker node. So let me enter in this, let me clear this, and let me use docker container ls. Okay, so you will see we have nginx container in our worker node as well. So basically, and if you want to match name, you can see this name nginx2, which is name of our service. Okay, so now let's try to understand what happened here. Initially I simply executed docker service command on our manager and created one service. So let me list out all the available services. Okay, so currently as you can see we have two services running, nginx1 and nginx2. nginx1 service created container on manager 1 node, and nginx2 created container on our worker node. Okay, so let's try to understand what happened here. So we can relate this with our previous example. So what I explain here is, if your particular node is busy or maybe working with some other containers, docker service or docker swarm is smart enough to identify that, and it will create container on a node which is free. So that's exactly what happened in our case as well. So when we run our service command in the first time, it created container in our manager node. Okay, and once the manager node occupied with one service and and when we run a create service command second time, this time our Docker Swarm service identified, okay, our manager node is busy, so let's create container on the node which is free. And in our case, the node was free at that time was worker node. That's why second time when we run Docker service create command, it created container on our worker node. So this is how the Docker Swarm and Docker Swarm service, ultimately Docker Swarm service will create containers, but it is creating containers little bit smarter way. It will do a lot of other things as well, and there are a few other benefits of using Docker Swarm service command. We will see that in our upcoming videos. I think that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.